Welcome to Higher Caliber.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Higher Caliber Podcast. Hope you had a happy new year and a good Christmas. We're here with Tim, obviously.
As always.
And we finally get a chance to talk to Brandon Powers. Thanks for coming on, man.
Hello.
So I don't want to completely butcher your intro, so I'm going to let you do it for us. If you don't mind letting us know who you are.
Who are you?
My name is Brandon Powers. I'm a guy who likes to work out, lift weights, shoot, eat pizza.
Interview's over. All right. So you have a pretty interesting story in regards to how you got to what you're doing today. I know you're a Coast Guard veteran, and you want to go ahead and start there and kind of, I want to eventually get to your peak performance class, what you got going on now. But if you wouldn't mind letting us know kind of what led up to that.
All right. Yeah, as Jared mentioned, Coast Guard veteran, joined after high school, served for 7 years. When I got out, I was an aviation maintenance technician stationed down at Air Station, Miami. It was a great time, had a lot of fun, but I wanted to pursue something else in life. So can't say, like everyone says, go back to college. I never started it. So I went to college. I went back to school maybe. At the University of Wisconsin La Crosse for exercise, sport and science, majored in fitness, had a minor in nutrition, double concentration in strength conditioning and coaching competitive athletics. I wanted to become a strength coach, wanted to get back into athletics. During my time I developed overuse injuries from my job, repetitions that we did. And I wanted to eventually get back into kind of that sector and help out, military, armed professionals in that way, because, the job is demanding in a way, regardless of what you're doing. So that was kind of the main goal. So graduated school with that degree, went and did an internship and was a volunteer strength coach at the Air Force Academy, and then took an actual job with the Air Force as an exercise physiologist at Ellsworth Air Force Base, and was there for a few years. And it's where I started to really implement my concepts and theories and thoughts on human performance training, strength and conditioning, not just from a physical standpoint, but started introducing vision training, hand-eye coordination with their security forces members there, with the Fit Light kit, with the tennis balls, all this stuff that I had picked up from traditional athletics, and how we work as strength coaches or sports performance specialists, whatever you want to title us as.
Yeah.
Utilizing those concepts with athletes outside of their sport so that we look to improve performers, create creative decision makers, adaptive problem solvers, and have the most transferability in what they're doing with us into their sport. So that's where I started doing a lot of my stuff with those guys there at Ellsworth, and mainly with the security forces guys. They were the ones that kind of took to it the most. But, for the most part, job there was to oversee the physical training on the entire installation. Also got to work. It was pretty cool to work with and talk with B-1 pilots on their requirements. You think sitting in a cockpit in an airplane like that isn't very physically demanding, but they're up there for hours and hours and hours on end, flying all the way around the world and back, basically.
Yeah, it's definitely not a video game.
No. So it's interesting. It was interesting to talk with them and to work with them to develop some type of training program that would benefit them, and getting to go and see what they do, see the cockpits where they work and how they do things. And also we had an EOD unit on base. So I always consulted with them, or they consulted with me, and talked and trained as those guys also go on deployments and kind of be outside the wire and doing things. So that's kind of where I got back into the career field that I wanted to. Unfortunately, at the time, budget cuts were coming, and the Air Force decided to cut our job. So instead of sticking around, we took off, moved back to Wisconsin, and started, what I'm doing now, Fireline Shooting and Training Center. We had one location, ended up with two, and now we're back to one. But it's indoor range, retail, gun store, ammo, accessories, and of course, big part is training. And a lot of, again, what I've done as a coach from a kind of a performance standpoint is implement a lot of those principles, those concepts, those methods into firearms training to kind of make a unique blend or just a unique coaching style. And maybe just like a different take on how things work. Certainly, since being in that industry or in this industry since 2014, have learned a lot from many people. And I'm certainly not where I was nearly 10 years ago, kind of just getting into the firearms industry and learning how to blend these concepts together. But it's been an interesting journey. It's been a very cool ride. And it's constantly just been evolving over and over and over again on how we can continue to, make firearms training sort of like a play or a game-like kind of situations, and mold them together. So it's always exploring, it's always testing, and it's finding ways to kind of bring what's up here into play and make it applicable.
Did the fitness thing come before the firearms? I don't know if you just said it or I just remember that you have like a wrestling background. So you've had that for a while.
I grew up, like wrestling was my sport. I grew up doing that as a kid, all the way through high school. When I was in the Coast Guard, I was still looking and being active in clubs to compete and to still be in that realm. For a while there, took a break, and then also, like while I was in the Coast Guard, got really into coaching. I coached a high school team when I was in Florida, coached another high school team when I was in South Dakota, and even still I was active coaching through college. And then as we kind of got spun up with other things, it just took a back seat, and you kind of put priorities in different spots. Now, where we're at now, my little son, my boy is starting wrestling. He started last week. So cool. Like, hey, we need some help. I'm like, okay. I can do this. So now we're back to herding cats. But no, it's cool. Sports and athletics have been a very big part of my life. Growing up doing them, being involved as an athlete, and also coaching different sports. So, getting into teaching firearms, like it was trying to learn a lot of the technical fundamentals from things. But I think from a coaching standpoint, it's just, how well can you communicate with people? How well can you, explain the concepts? And I really believe in letting people kind of do self exploration and discovery and what's going to work for them. And as long as they're accomplishing X, Y, and Z, I don't care about A, B, and C. Yeah.
I've heard you talk before about the difference between an instructor and a coach. Do you mind explaining that for everybody?
Yeah. So, like in the firearms industry, you hardly ever hear the word coach. It's always instructor. And, strength and conditioning coach, sports coach, fitness coach, it's words are very interchangeable. And how people do things. But I think, there's a clear definition and there's a clear line of what makes one versus the other. Kind of in my opinion, the instructor is somebody who greets you when you walk in, says, all right, let's get to work, go through the motions, and we're done. Wow, great job. Have a good day, and we'll see you later. It's kind of like a regurgitation of information over and over and over again. And the information really never, ever changes. And there's no constant feedback. There's no constant evolution. There's no progression. It's, hey, thanks for showing up. Thanks for coming. And it's basically like how I'm doing it is how you need to do it. and there's no other way. It's just that. Where I think of like a coach, it's constant interaction. That's how my experience is. Like we have a sport coach, and you might only be around them for 4 to 6 months out of the year, but 5 days out of the week, you're with them for a couple hours, and it's constant just progressions and evolutions throughout a season. And a coach is also one that is not afraid to, I think, go and recommend you to somebody else when you may not have the answer or you can't provide what somebody may need. But a coach is also somebody who is investing themselves into the people they work with, but also into themselves on constant education and learning and being able to communicate better. And their methods and their concepts and their theories are always ever changing because, and from a coach standpoint, it's you care more about the people you work with than, maybe about yourself so much.
Yeah, there's a big separation and ego.
Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how well I can maybe do something. It's how well can I communicate these concepts to people to get them to be doing things better.
Right.
So there's a definite split between what makes one versus the other, and the words are very interchangeable. And kind of the one thing that I've seen that is very different from the fields that I've been involved in or am involved in versus, the firearms industry is that we kind of miss that coach relationship. In this space.
Yeah. What you said about not being able to articulate, I mean, that's why there's not usually or retired boxers in people's corners. They're usually guys that, can actually articulate what to do and not just, well, I can do it. So figure it out.
And we've all been to those, especially firearms classes that, they're the instructor and you go and you pay the money and they run you through all their drills or whatever. And it's thanks for coming. Have a good day. There's no, coaching aspect. And I think people really suffer from that. They're paying money for just to be around that person, if you will.
Yeah. And, and that sad part is I had a conversation with a friend yesterday about, this very concept is we've all been through that situation, me personally. And it's just like, hey, I paid my fee. I've got supervised drills that we're running and that's it. It's like, okay, that was disappointing.
What do we always call it? Supervised shooting or
supervised shooting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically you're getting babysat on the range and just being told and kind of being told what to do.
Yep.
One other thing too, where I kind of look at, a coaching situation is, providing programs and providing a path, and not necessarily making people do their own homework and trying to figure things out. It's like, hey, this is all we've gone through. Well, on all of this, like here is an ideas or here is a way you can continue to work on these things.
You get their foot in the door, basically.
Yeah. So, and you get homework to go home with versus you trying to figure out the homework.
Right.
We establish baselines, we establish where we're at, and we continue to utilize, what was learned or conveyed and instructed over the past, 8 to 16 hours. And it's like, well, here's your roadmap. Now continue to do this and go about your way. So yeah, it's very, very, I would say it's difficult at times because shooting is expensive.
Definitely.
It's not like we can just go and go do something, and because shooting has expendables. We've got brass, primers, bullets, powder, all that's expensive. Like that's the expensive part. And the other thing everyone talks about is the dry fire aspect, and which is free, of course. But again, like people need to know how to do things. And I think one thing that I've looked back over in the past, 12 months or so is we hear this all the time, like come learn how to train. When I think maybe we should spin it maybe a little differently is come learn how to self-coach.
Yeah.
learning how to self-diagnose, understand the feedback that is being presented to you through everything you're doing, and how to recognize it, how to analyze it, and how to do things on your own, because essentially like your shooting journey is going to be very just you, yourself, and I. Because we don't have a lot of opportunities to have that coach in the corner to guide us through things.
Yeah. Did you grow up shooting? I'm kind of wondering where that you get out of the military and it's, gun store and range type thing.
No, I mean, you could say like, you could use the overused term. I grew up shooting guns, but like every other, American who has guns, it's like, I grew up hunting. Go out hunting every year, and every couple of times a year, you'd get the guns out, sight them in, go shoot them, or you just go out and have some fun. But like shooting, no.
Yeah.
The gun store kind of came around as an idea of just wanting to explore an opportunity and to see how we could fit a need into a space that we believed was there. So it was just kind of a random thought that had been there for a while, and having the current job situation be what it was like,
why not?
Let's give it a try. Let's give it a go and see where it takes us.
So what brought you to competitive shooting?
I think from a competitive shooting standpoint, getting into it was trying to really just dive down the rabbit hole and learn a lot of the technical fundamentals of how to shoot better. Mm-hmm. We hear it all the time about if people want to get better, or certain agencies or units want to get better, they're not hiring some tactical guy to come in and do things because their previous life they did a certain cool job. It's no, we want to bring in the people who are the best shooters in the world, and how they do things. So that's kind of what got me into that, was just exploring of how to become a better shooter and learn more about the technical side of the task. So,
how was your first match?
Horrible. I've shared it. It's somewhere.
Okay.
I look very, very tense and robotic.
Yeah.
Even like, given my background as an athlete, it was just, was very much more conscious of, the gun in the hand and doing things a certain way. But quickly, like that kind of went away, like got very comfortable, very soon, in doing things. So like, it wasn't great. I remember the story of sitting in the clubhouse at the end of the match. And if you guys know James DeLambert, James has grown so much since I've known him, and just he's a great shooter, and just kind of watch him evolve into a young man that he is now, from being a teenager. I remember this kid, he's 15. And we're sitting in the clubhouse, and there's a stage like, can you operate? And he's looking at the scores, and he looks at me. He's like, clearly you cannot. I'm like, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
But no, so like, that was like, there's a lot to learn, like getting just punched right in the throat to start out. And, it just kind of went from there. So, was into it quite a bit in the beginning. And then over the past few years, I haven't done it so much more now, because we're just at a point in life where kids take priorities, families taking more priority to not be running around, not be gone all the time, especially with work and other obligations. So, still get out and do it when I can, or when I feel I have time to do that and invest the time into it. But it's certainly fun. It's certainly a way to learn where your deficiencies are. I don't think it's certainly not the only way to improve upon your skills and your knowledge and things like that.
Right. Yeah. I'm just wondering when that light bulb clicked on, where you saw people kind of maybe a little out of shape, running awkwardly, and you're like, hey, this is more than just, standing there and shooting. There's a lot going into this. I could actually, get there. So probably didn't take you very long to figure it out.
No. I kind of the strength coach mindset of myself that I have is we're always analyzing anything we get out and go do, or athletes or sport we work with. It's first and foremost, it's like, hey, we need to do a needs analysis. Like, what's the environment? Like, what's the sport? What is it? Who are the stakeholders? The athletes, coaches, parents, the community, whomever is involved. Like, what is going into this, and what's it in for them? And how are they involved in it? We're looking at the environment. We're looking at physical and mental requirements. We're looking at all of that. So very analytical in the sport starting out. And it was, we could definitely start meshing and molding concepts here, because it is an athletic sport, regardless, I think, what some people may think about it.
Well, you've proven that.
Or how well you need to be in shape to do it and to be good at it. So there's certainly some benefits to that, I believe. So it was just kind of there, and I would say, it started from there.
Okay. So walk me through the genesis of Peak Performance.
Well, Peak Performance, and again, people kind of looked at Peak Performance when it came out was, hey, like, this is a movement style class for competitive shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's certainly an avenue we can go down, but it's not like the end all be all. Most of us who train with firearms and concealed carry and for self-protection and defense, like, a lot of us aren't going to go this route of competitive shooting. But a big thing that I see, and many others may see, is like, when you put a firearm in someone's hand, they become robotic. They become very, very aware of what is in their hand. And to a point, like,
almost to their detriment.
How hard can I move with this and not, hurt myself or somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
But it's also kind of looking at, from the competitive shooting aspect of it, or just in general, the overall population is movement is life. Seeing people move or not be able to move well because they're tight, they have imbalances, they have injuries, they're just not in shape anymore, in a sense. And I use that term pretty loosely here.
Mm-hmm.
But so kind of looking at it was like, all right, we need to continue to find a way to implement this style of training and this concept into our daily lives, to be able to move better. Because, you two, and probably majority of people who listen to this, played sports in high school, right? Yes.
Yep.
But once you stop doing that, like, the amount of movement you were doing was reduced significantly, because you no longer had practice sessions, games, or any other type of training session you may have done. So what happens is you stop moving. Well, you start to lose all that, those patterns and that physical literacy that you've built up over the years. But you still want to go out and have fun and play hard. And this is where people now get tired, hurt, injured, or sore from just being on their feet all day, or a 2-day event, or whatever. And this was the idea of Peak Performance: is how can we continue to supplement some training into people's regiment who want to be better at competitive shooting, or if they are an armed professional, or just average Joes like you and I, but still want to feel like they are capable.
Yeah.
Because that is a real thing. Like, being able to get up off the ground or get back down, to move vertically, and to be able to get from one point to the other as quickly as you can, is a reality, and it's very much a possibility. So why continue to hinder yourself by not doing these things?
Yeah, I think most people realize it too late, when they're retirement age, and they're like, oh, I have no muscle mass, and I've completely just squandered my,
So that was kind of the idea behind Peak Performance from a physical standpoint, was how can we, take 15 minutes or 20 minutes a few days a week just to, in a sense, from a firearms world, train off the range to make that training better on the range, and then take it further off the range and put it back into daily activities in real life. A lot of times I see in the firearms community, like, hey, I'm going to go work movement. And it's always just done on the range, gun in hand. Like, it works. You're going to get improvement because you're doing it more. But
right.
Movement is so much more than just running from position to position on the range with a gun in your hand and kind of blending those skills together. Movement's being able to get down, tie your shoes, take a squat down on the grass, pick your kids up, or if you have to, run across the parking lot as fast as you can. Like people tend to put it off for a long time, but then when they start to get back into it, they're like, holy shit.
Yeah, it sucks.
They're like, I feel so much better. Like,
yeah,
man, I've dropped some weight. My joints don't hurt anymore. I'm understanding how to do these things. And I have never heard anybody tell me or say, I wish I wasn't in as good a shape as I was.
Right.
That's very true.
Or I wish I wasn't as strong as I was. I wish I had less mobility. I've never heard that. And no one has ever said it. And this is the thing, like people think like, if I ask you, like, what does in shape mean to you guys? What does it mean?
To me, it means not being overweight and being able to, like you said, like walk up the stairs and not be out of breath, but it's a pretty bold or broad term, I should say.
Sure.
It's in the eye of the beholder.
Think, like, when I say it though, they're like, oh, they're going to be, I've got to run a 4.40. I have to back squat X amount of weight or bench press this or have this certain style of physique. And it's like, no, it's not what being in shape means.
Yeah.
It's being capable of doing the task when required to and having a successful or positive outcome to that. And obviously, the more in shape you are, the better chances of that happening is. So, like having a healthy weight, eating properly, and doing all these things, like it's a very broad term and it means different things to different people.
Yeah.
But I like to use just football as an example of all the 53-man roster on an NFL team is look at all the different body types there. Like each one of them has a job. Most of them are a hell of a lot better athletes than any of us. And they're in shape, conditioned to do that role. So, it's a very broad term. And again, it means different things to different people. But ultimately it's like being able to execute the tasks within your life. And at some point, like that task is going to be getting up off the floor, being able to squat down on the toilet, walking up and down the stairs without being out of breath. And those things, like, so that's important. And that's where I believe we need to continue to maintain this level of physical literacy and resilience in our tissues so that we're able to continue to do those things for as long as possible, because there's no going back up the hill.
Right.
Like, most of us are stagnant or we're going down the hill because, the wheels start to fall off at the age of 30.
Yeah.
Like you start to lose certain things then. And once you reach 40, like it gets even harder. And imagine when you're at 50 and 60. So I tell people, it's like, hey, you just got to get up and keep moving every day. Like whether it's walking, running, jogging, if you like to go lift weights, go do that, ride a bike, go swimming,
do something,
go play with your kids, get off your butt and go do things and continue to work through these various range of motions and challenge yourself so that you can continue to maintain what you have. Because if you don't, you are going to lose it faster than you want.
Oh, we see people all the time that look like they should be able to get off the couch and they can't.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to be mean to those people, but you look at them and you're like, I don't want to be like that when I'm, not even 60 yet. And it's from just sitting around all day or a sedentary lifestyle. If you want to get, ask them the testosterone question.
Oh, so somebody came to me the other day, a fireman, and he's in his mid-20s, maybe early to mid-20s. And he is getting testosterone injections from his doctor because he has low testosterone. And he said that there is some correlation between first responders having low testosterone because either they're
apparently it's elevated cortisol,
adrenaline, or sleep cycles or something like that. Do you know anything about that?
Not like specifically, but certainly I've heard and read, throughout the years, like given certain job types, the exposures, what you're around, certain chemicals and hormones that you may have more in your body, like it has negative effects to it.
Sure.
If he is getting TRT from his doctor, I would imagine like his levels are low. I would hope, and he's just not getting, paying the doc some extra cash for that.
Right. And I don't know the specifics of that, but I mean, when I first heard it, I wanted to say that he was full of crap. There
are some. I mean, and everybody's a little different. Kind of given how you react to the job stimulus and the stress.
Right. Sure.
But yeah, the hormone levels in your body can throw other things off. So I'm not going to say it's not a possibility, but it certainly could be a possibility.
That sounds a lot more individual. Yeah, that sounds a lot more possible. I was talking about the skinny legs and the big gut thing.
Oh,
because that seems like made up fairy tale.
I don't know. I started to dive into it, and what are the symptoms of low testosterone? And there was something I read that said, if somebody has
every dude with skinny legs and a big gut.
It wasn't everyone, but they said a high percentage of people with skinny legs and a big gut has low testosterone. I
don't know about that. I've got no. No data to speak on that.
I just wanted to know if you thought that sounded crazy. Everyone's sitting there drinking their Bud Light with their skinny jeans on going, it's my low T. Leave me alone.
I don't know. Maybe they just always skip leg day.
Right. Could be. You talked about your class and your ideology. Do you find it to be a hard sell in the firearms industry as far as classes and stuff?
Yeah, because people want to shoot,
right?
They're going to a class to learn how to shoot. So yeah, it's a difficult sell, and I'm sure you guys have seen it over the years how like the approach or the style of curriculum has maybe has gained popularity and more people are doing it. There's different versions of this idea out there now. And by no means do I think that I came up with the idea, because the idea had been being done for a long, long time before, 2020, 2019, when I started to put it together and started to do it. But yeah, it certainly is, because when I started pushing it out in 2019, everyone was, well, how's that going to make you a better shooter? This isn't going to make you shoot better. It's like, well, you're right. Directly it's not going to, but indirectly it makes you a better performer.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it is tough to do that. But over the years, and even I would say the last 12 months, just continually to share more and more about it. People have reached out to me more about it. And again, kind of the field that I think may benefit from this the most have been reaching out. And that's a lot of just agencies and departments from a law enforcement standpoint.
Perfect.
Going, yeah, we see the benefit. We can see how this can help. And it's very different from what we are doing in our own academies or in our own training days. And what we're doing there is we're not necessarily training the requirements for the job. We're training requirements for what we need to match on the range. And it's like, yeah, that's a huge flaw. And it's good that you're recognizing this. And this is an absolute excellent opportunity for you to take advantage of, to learn how to create better performers, within your units, your agencies. So, that's kind of cool to see. But yeah, it is a tough sell, because when you think of shooting class or a firearms class, people are like, well, I want to learn how to shoot better. And over the years, again, like it's just, like my idea of the course is continuing to evolve and mold, and how it's all meshes together.
Craft it.
And where it is today, kind of on paper, and what we do is still the same idea, but it's certainly done in a different style now.
I think one of the big things that you bring too is the visual stuff. Not everybody does whole picture in their class, and I don't want to give I mean, feel free to talk about it as much as you want. I don't want to give away every detail of your class. But.
Yeah, I mean, like I look at people that have mentored me over the years in a strength and conditioning role, and they were not just the strength coach on the floor with a whistle, screaming and hollering at athletes while they lift weights, or blowing the whistle doing conditioning drills out in the grass. It very much is a holistic approach, and I look at the strength coaches that were working with athletes that required hand-eye coordination, baseball, hockey, football, and kind of what they were doing. But also, I think a big influence to me was being at the Air Force Academy and being able to walk across the street into Clune Arena and into the Human Performance Lab and talk with Coach Al Weil. He was, before he started working in the lab, he was the Academy's boxing coach for decades. So, here's a guy teaching hand-eye coordination and vision drills in their Human Performance Lab, working with their cadets and doing things. So kind of where I got introduced into a lot of that. And I think it makes complete sense to incorporate that into a firearms segment, because, vision does drive what we do and really in everything we do in life.
Yeah.
80% roughly of the stimulus that we receive every day is through vision. And I tell it all the time, like, hey, your eyes, their one only job is to gather information. So the more you can increase the strength and endurance of those muscles, you start to gather in more. You can open your vision more and gather more information because they're not tired, they're not getting stressed. And the theory behind that is that your eyes are made of striated muscles, just like any other muscle in your body. Mm-hmm. So we use theories of strength conditioning, like, hey, here's set reps protocols.
Yeah, we
know that tissues grow, they get stronger. Wow, it's never heard of anyone doing a biopsy on an eyeball, which I don't think would be a good idea. So we utilize that theory to go, hey, and there's been, vision training's been around for 60 years. I mean, since the 60s, that I can go back and find people that were doing it then and where it's come today. So it's nothing new. And for certain, like baseball teams have been using it since the 60s. More and more sports start to use it. And now we see it in airplane racing, boat racing, rally car driving, race car driving, all kinds of different sports that require, great hand-eye coordination and instant decision making.
Yeah.
So when I start incorporating it now, it's like, well, what we do with what's in our hand is very important, and we need to make sure and understand that we are making good decisions and our eyes are gathering information, and we're working on the reactionary process, which is sensory stimulation, perception, cognition, and execution. So, taking what the Academy's been doing, I think since like the 80s, and the thousands of cadets they've put through their assessments and their courses and their curriculum with that, but also the studies that they've done show, like, if you train vision, you can increase your dynamic visual acuity, not necessarily the static, which is like 2020, 2010, but the dynamic visual acuity of being able to pick up more information and remember more information as you pick that up. So I think it's very important, and it's something that I do like to incorporate into peak performance, because it's a piece of the puzzle. And where a lot of people, when we do, vision from a firearm standpoint, it's like, well, this is what I want you to be doing. And I think it's more of a technical aspect of the skill, where we're eliminating the tool and we're working the mechanism more.
Yeah.
So again, it's just a different way to achieve the same goal. And I think by doing one benefits the other. And when you mesh them together, you've got a darn good end goal and product.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, you're sending people home with something they can actually work on. You're not just saying you should stretch more and shoot more if you want to. It's the whole picture. And I don't know why it's taking so long to get to the shooting world, especially for police departments. I mean, gathering as much information as possible in a split second, that's huge. I
think talking with law enforcement departments over the years, is administrative, parts of the department are very resistant to change, and they need to be able to justify what the change is going to be and how that's going to impact them.
Mm-hmm.
So, because they're like, hey, if it ain't broken, like, why are we going to fix it?
Yeah.
But if you never work to change things will never change.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think we hear it enough that standards are too low. We need to change how we do things. So there is this evolution, and I said it 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Like, this style, these concepts will continue to become more prevalent in the firearms community because of where they have been, where they've gone, and who's going to catch on next. So every year, it seems to be another topic. More and more people are aware of it now. It's new to them, and it's just this evolutionary hamster wheel of things that will come. And who knows, in a few years, it might be like, oh yeah, it's just common knowledge. We do it all the time. Right. And then it comes back to like, wow, this is new, amazing stuff. It's like, well, at some point, everything is new to somebody. So, but it's not necessarily new in the sense that it's never been done.
Yeah. I know you're not a I told you so guy, but I'm sure it feels like that sometimes.
Yeah, it does. But at the same point, like, I'm not going to, throw that and rub that in someone's face.
You're not going to be spiteful about it. I get that.
And just be like, yeah, like, and I think that's kind of going back to the coach role is like, cool, you got it. You want to work on it. Let's do it. I have an individual in a class right now, and they made a comment the other day is, man, you got a lot of patience. And I was just like, you have to, we need to meet people on their level. And I will say, through my time in coaching, little kids in sports, to the average population doing personal training when I started to get my feet wet in doing that, to coaching kids from a strength and conditioning standpoint, to coaching people, no matter where they are, we have to meet them at their level. And we can't get frustrated in that. We can't say, nope, I'm not going to work with you because you're not here. You're beneath me. And it's unfair. So yeah, there comes a time where patience is tested, but ultimately, like, if people are hungry to learn and they're there and they're paying you, like, take all the time in the world and we will invest everything we can into it in that time frame. But I just looked at her and I said, it's what I'm here for. Like, I can't make you catch on any faster than you are. Right. So, we'll work through it. We'll get through it, and we'll take it step by step, progressions on how we want to do things. But I said patience is a must. It has to be.
Yeah. And the classes you do, not just your peak performance classes, but you do a lot of other entry level stuff too. So you're used to people, the people that are unsure of themselves constantly, and
people loading around backwards into the magazine, trying to insert the magazine backwards into the gun. All those things. Like, I see it all the time. And it's just part of the job. I was looking back, try to go through things quite often, and usually end of the year, I just go through the phone and start deleting and wiping everything out. Like, okay, I saved this, I looked at it, I haven't used it, gone.
Pizza.
Yeah, right. I ate that. But I came across a slide that an individual was doing for a presentation, and it was just a kind of a pie chart. And it was, who in the gun industry was training and this and that. And it was, I want to say the percentage was very high. I want to say it was 80% of gun owners do not train. Mm-hmm. So, and the people that do go do training are typically like checking the box on things.
Damn box checkers, man.
Every episode we talk about the box checkers.
To get like a concealed carry permit, or to be like, hey, I want to know how to shoot my gun. And we're like, okay. But if you're going to do anything other outside of this, like, we recommend you continue to work on things. Oh yeah. So, you get a lot of those folks in courses that we do. We've got shoot camp, which I think is a great course that we do, that we came up with. When was that? 2016, maybe 17, that we came up with shoot camp.
Oh, the good
years. Shoot camp's an 8-hour class, but it's broken up into 8 1-hour sessions.
Okay.
And we meet 2 times a week. So it's a 4-week class. And it basically, you could take an all-day Saturday class, but we've chopped it up. So it's not like just a flood of information to people. And we start off with an assessment and we end with an assessment. And in between is all the good stuff. So we try to look at, we got 4 weeks of education. We got 4 weeks of training. Is this more of a long-term skill development that we're seeing? Or in the 8 hours, is it a very short-term skill development?
Yeah.
Because there's a big difference. And, we give them homework to do. We give them things to do in between sessions. And it's by far one of the best classes I think we have. And it also is one of the more popular ones that we do, probably the most popular.
Yeah. I mean, 8 hours is long for anything. So, just like I'm thinking about a concealed carry class, your brain is zapped. You know what I mean? So what's the retention rate? Do people go through, do you have anybody that just after the first day, they're like, oh, this isn't for me, or do they enjoy just going?
I think it's happened. There's been some people, but like shoot camp's a very basic class, and it's a technical style of teaching, and teaching the fundamentals and techniques, because we're trying to work on that mastery of those things.
But it's bite-sized chunks.
It is, and it's one session, and this is what we're going to focus on. That's it. Like, so think of it as a teaching block in an all-day class. We just get it we get one session, one sitting, and let them digest that for 48 to 96 hours, between the classes, because we either run them on Tuesdays and Thursdays or Wednesdays and Fridays, given how we want to manipulate the scheduling. But like, people come in and they've got very little knowledge to none, or people come in and they understand and know how to shoot, but yet they still walk away with tidbits and little golden nuggets and improvements at the end, just by understanding how to shoot better. And now they've got a better understanding of how to do that.
I'm sure the entry level classes have kind of taught you how to, most people that take your peak performance class, let's say, if you're not doing like law enforcement only, they're usually people that shoot a lot that are USPSA shooters. And I'm sure the entry level helps you quite a bit, knowing all the stupid questions they don't want to ask you. You know what I mean? Like, it helps you articulate things a lot better, I'm assuming.
Peak performance is certainly not a beginner's class. We prefer people to have some sort of experience and knowledge. Like, hey, can you draw the gun safely? Can you know how to load your gun and not have any help? And are you safe when you do things? That's
why not having a gun in the class would have been better. But I know you said you thought, like you were saying, you don't want to, or at first you weren't going to have a gun, and people were like, well, no one's going to not want to shoot a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's kind of like, again, just another a way to approach the problem. We want to learn how to move better. Like, well, let's ditch the tool, because what I do with my feet doesn't matter what I have in my hand, or how I control my body has no nothing to do with what I have in my hand. So like, we don't need the gun to learn how to move better. But when you start to add in the gun into the equation, like, yeah, there's an important part to that. Understand how to now manipulate the gun in space so that you're safe with it around you and around other people, especially because I tell you, we do teach that class, that curriculum very differently from a civilian standpoint to armed professionals, as kind of the rules of the range are a little bit different. So instead of, from a civilian standpoint, we're, trying to be very mindful of breaking the 180 if we're looking in a competitive setting. If we're working more from a defensive standpoint or protection standpoint, or armed professionals, it's keep the gun pointed in the safe direction. Well, now it becomes the safest direction. So,
and they do a lot of the temple index and stuff like that. Is that what that's called?
No. Yeah, like this. We don't get into that. I don't find a true benefit to it for most situations. And
I mean, it's supposed to be for extremely crowded, like Secret Service type stuff, isn't it? To where you can't point it at people's feet. Isn't that the whole idea where it's supposed to be like?
Well, I think people down below you, yes.
Yeah.
But we work at kind of a midsection index, or kind of a holster index, to anchor it in your hip.
Yeah.
If it's out of the holster, things like that. But yeah, the course is taught a little different. Still following the 4 safety rules.
Yeah.
But just how they're applied for muzzle directions are a bit different. But yeah, like looking back into that, I've had some very less experienced people kind of go through peak performance. But the big thing is like, they're safe with the gun. Yeah. They understand how to manipulate it. They know how to shoot the gun. And there's not so much the baby steps to kind of figuring out where the hands need to go and what we need to be doing. But in that style of teaching, it's like very much self-discovery. It's like, what's working for you, and how are you accomplishing X, Y, and Z using A, B, and C. But yeah, when you get into the basic classes and courses, very much the crawl, walk, run mentality, very much there. But it's also the same idea of in peak performance. And I certainly am a big believer is I will not make anyone do something that I have not done or am not able to do. So I understand, what they're going through, and I certainly am not going to allow somebody or make somebody do something that I don't feel that they're comfortable in doing.
Right. Well, we can attest. We've seen you demo everything. So
yeah,
we were thinking about making Tim your not test subject, but if Tim ever follows the handouts, then one day he's going to be 50 or 60 pounds lighter with a Beretta in his hand.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go that far.
It comes with the territory.
I thought he was going to get an HK.
Hey, you buy one, I'll buy it from you, bub.
All right. I'll mark it up a little bit.
Yeah, the shipping's $300.
Give your buddy Ernest a little nudge, like, hey.
I got one in the shop. You can come get.
Nice. I want to shoot all the different trigger variations before I pull a trigger, so to speak.
I would say the LEM is interesting.
Well, I've never put my hands on one, and I'd like to do that before, I make the decision, because I've got a single action P30 now, but I want to try the LEM trigger for sure.
Is it basically like firing half cock? Like, does it feel like you're firing half cock?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's very interesting because it's a hammer fired gun, but it's like DAO all the time, but it doesn't feel like a DAO trigger. It's very, very short.
It's like a Glock that's like got spring tension behind it the whole time, kind of. I know it's got a hammer, but is it basically like it being like a fully sprung striker that you're just releasing?
I don't know how the internals work.
It's German stuff. I don't know
either. It's magic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know the specifics on how the hammers work, but it's basically like I believe like a DAO gun all the time, like hammers down.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's just the trigger manipulation is very short compared to like a 92 or any other DAO style of pistol. So it's neat. It's definitely different.
It's plastic frame though, so
whatever.
So is the PX4. I love the PX4. It just, there's something about it that's not. It's not a 92. I don't know.
It's definitely not a 92.
Yeah.
So what are your goals this year? You got any big goals this year?
Continue to press forward. I approach 41 next month. So fitness wise, like continue to do what I'm doing in that aspect. Continue to, find ways to implement more and more of like the performance side of training into arms training, and just kind of like finding ways to create game-like situations without concocting ridiculous scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Put it that way.
Yep.
I kind of look at firearms training, being doing this now for almost 10 years, is every instructor is like a skills coach in sport. If you want to get better if you want to be a quarterback, you go to a quarterback skills coach. Mm-hmm. And they're going to refine your technique, where you to release the ball and do all these things. And I look at, it's kind of what firearms training is. It's very technical. And before anyone, loses their mind out of this, I'm not downplaying or saying we shouldn't continue down that path. The fundamentals are super important. But
Brandon Powers told us to stop shooting to get better.
Yeah, there are a ton of skills coaches out there who are teaching the fundamentals and how to get better at the fundamentals, and so that you can shoot faster and more accurately. And I think that's really, really good. But there was a conversation I had last week with a group of gentlemen, and somebody had mentioned, what they do in other sports, and one key term that stuck out to me was drilling. And I'm like, yeah, like we don't do drilling in the sense in firearms training like we do in other sports. And what I mean by that is drilling, like let's take wrestling or people like in the space or into jiu-jitsu or whatever. And it's like, all right, I'm going to get into this situation, and now I need to find my way out of it, whether offensively or defensively. Mm-hmm. And there's this hierarchy of consensual kind of intensity. It's like, hey, it's consensual. There's no competitiveness here. We're learning. We're working through the movements. And this comes right out of Craig Douglas' ShivWorks. This is like how he explains it. And now we have consensual, but it's competitive. And then it's non-consensual and it's competitive, like full on go. And we do this style of drilling and wrestling and in combative sports, or even in football. Like, hey, we're going to set the play up and we're going to walk through it, and then we're going to increase the intensity. And now it's whoever's going to win is going to win. Mm-hmm. And now I get it. Like that's very hard to do in firearms training unless you're doing force on force. But even then that gets complicated in my opinion, because I've been involved in some of those evolutions, and everybody's always trigger happy. They're paranoid on how that's going to work out.
Everybody's watching you.
Yeah. And everyone's like, what are their hands?
Did you take that, Craig?
Again,
did you take that, Craig?
I did.
Douglas class?
I've taken Craig's ECQC. It was 2 years ago down on La Crosse here back in Wisconsin. So it was a good class. And like his Thunderdome, as it's called it.
Welcome to Thunderdome.
Or like how he does role playing. It's very open. Yeah. But there's a lid on it. It does not allow to get like into crazy concocted scenarios, and things. So it's very much different. But kind of what I mean is like, how can we institute some style of drill, not like a shooting drill, mm-hmm. but a drill to work, reality into the performance. Mm-hmm. And it was, recently kind of looking at is like, well, with the tennis ball and grabbing, casting the ball back and forth and grabbing it and reading the letters, like this is me being task fixated somewhere else. And then like, well, when the stimulus goes off or the stimulus is presented, I now need to act. Mm-hmm. That's an everyday life thing right there for us.
Yeah.
We're not standing on Main Street anymore at high noon waiting to get into a gunfight with somebody with 20 paces away. I'm not. I don't know. I mean, some people might want to, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
But and I've talked about that with that kind of idea with a lot of my colleagues in the law enforcement community. And I'm like, hey, this could be you talking on the radio, you typing on your computer in your car, you walking up to your window, looking at identification, doing something, and you need to switch tasks very quickly and understand what needs to be done. There's things to be said about being very, very good at the technical skills of shooting. If you're better at something, you most likely will perform pretty well at whatever it's going to involve. But I don't think there's any harm in looking at other ways to mix in certain performance concepts. And this is something, I read many books from Rob Gray last year, and, learning how to move and coaching movement. And Rob's I think a sports scientist. He works out of University of Arizona or Arizona State. But he works a lot with baseball players, a lot with, performance in an environment that's unpredictable. And one thing he talks about, and I used it earlier already talking to you guys, is like creating adaptive problem solvers and creative decision makers. And I think that's really important in what the firearms industry is doing, because, the majority of us are not looking to perform very well. Let's say go out to perform and compete on a square range all the time. Like we're in this and we're doing things for protection and defensive use, or because people are sworn officers and they need to be able to perform on their job. So we're trying to utilize human performance concepts and principles and mesh them into training, into these technical skills to make them better performers, because that's ultimately the end goal. So trying to find ways like that to incorporate this style of training into firearms training, that's very, for one, easy to do, and it's applicable, and you don't need high fancy tech to do it. So a bag of tennis balls is like $10. Get a Sharpie marker and start writing some numbers on it and make people think before they are doing things, because the reality of it, again, is like, we're not going to be standing still, squared to a target, hands prepped to do the thing when it matters the most. We are going to be actively engaged, most likely in another task. So it's kind of the same thing of what I've started to do with law enforcement training when it comes to movement. Like, hey, we're learning the technical aspects, the mechanics of movement, using closed drills, cone drills, and it's very predictive. So this is the thing. This is the difference between change of direction training, movement training, and agility. Change of direction has total whole body movements, but it's very predictive. It's known, it's rehearsed. I know exactly when and where it's going to happen, whether the stimulus is tactile, audible, or visual. When it comes to agility, it has all that, but the stimulus is unknown. So one thing I started to introduce into law enforcement training is this unknown stimulus. So having them move, but then produce the stimulus and require an action after the stimulus has been presented. So it might be, hey, we're moving downrange or this or that. Well, on the whistle, I want you, so I'll use a visual stimulus to dictate the direction I want them to go. And then I'll use the whistle or the timer to initiate. All right, now you can engage a target. So it's getting them to think versus just mindlessly repping out reps like a robot on the range.
Yeah, they're already engaged in something, so they have way more stuff going on. They have to think their way out instead of waiting for the buzzer to go off. Yeah.
So, and again, there's a point in time to that. And I think it happens early on, to develop this level of technical mastery in the fundamentals and to continue to work on those, because that's what's going to make you a better shooter. I think the other things that we're looking to apply into training can assist you in becoming a better performer. So I think that's my big goal and focus, in the coming year is how to continue to find ways to incorporate those things into firearms training, that it doesn't make it into some silly entertainment thing or this widely unrealistic concocted scenario of, unrealistic training. Because I don't believe that's really beneficial, because we're not here for an experience. We're here to continue to learn here's the term, learn how to train. But how you can now take what we're doing and implement it into what you're already doing to add another layer or aspect into your programs. So
you don't want to turn it into a big circus, basically.
No, and the thing is like a lot of the stuff that we are implementing into training can be trained in and of itself, and you don't need the gun, you don't need the range to do those things. To work on the reactionary process, you don't need the gun to do that. To understand how to apply the brakes better or get on the gas in movement, you don't need the gun to do that. Right. But now when you incorporate the gun, you need to understand what the gun is giving you from a feedback standpoint. I mean that from a sighting system on when you can have an acceptable sight picture to take the shot or not. But when you hone the mechanics of the movements and things like that, like I think the shooting just will become better. The movement with the gun will become better because the ultimate goal is for them to both complement each other and not have one hinder the other.
For sure.
I do have a question. Brandon, when you're teaching your law enforcement only classes, do you see any like different types of students versus your USPSA shooters versus your law enforcement? Like, are they required to be there, or is it a voluntary thing?
Most of the courses that we've taught so far is voluntary.
Okay.
It's been open enrollment. And it's just been kind of aimed at, hey, we're gonna do an LE only class for this. So it's been open enrollment. So the people they want to be there because they do want to be there.
I think cops, if you're bringing a whole new idea,
back to blue, brother. Sorry.
You're bringing all these other ideas and stuff and not telling them how to do their jobs, but, showing them better ways to do things. I could see them, pushing back or not being the best students that they could be versus a USPSA shooter that wants to better their game. So I just didn't know if.
Yeah. And I think it's a fair and valid point, because even too, from an athletic standpoint, like you working with a team, there are some athletes who really want to be there, some who do want to be there, and others are like, I have to be here. So I'll go through the motions. I'll do it. And, you give everybody attention. You give, you acknowledge that they're all there. And there's going to be times where you stop investing yourself into certain people because they just don't care. But you still have to make sure that you keep them engaged, that you still express that, hey, it's cool that you're here. Let's continue to learn on things and things like that. So, but for the most part, a lot of the trainings that we've been doing, they've all been open enrollment. So people are wanting to be there. They're wanting to get better. And, I think that's a cool thing to see that group continue to push the envelope because they want to make change.
Very good.
For sure.
I know when I took your class and Jared, kind of pushed me into taking your class, which I'm glad I did. But I know at the very beginning, I think it was it July or August? I know it was about 6,000 degrees outside. And at first I was like,
warm that day. I remember that.
I was like, what in the hell did I get myself into? But by the end I was very, not only humbled, but it was a great class. And I'm glad I took it. For sure.
Yeah. And I kind of look at it like from the standpoint of you should walk away from a training, maybe not being humbled as much, but being like, man, I do see the importance of this.
Definitely.
And I also see it kind of play off into the other realm, like when individuals go to ECQC or they start doing grappling or jiu-jitsu and they're like, man, I'm not what I thought I was.
Yeah.
And I think this is it can certainly serve as a wake up call. And once you leave, now it's like, what do I need to continue to do to utilize that information to continue to improve upon? That's the big thing. Like, you could go to as many classes as you want and gain all the knowledge you want, but if you're not applying it, doesn't make you the smartest person in the room. It doesn't make you an expert.
Right.
So, I think that's the big thing is, people don't know what they don't know. Mm-hmm. And people don't realize their capabilities until they're pushed outside a comfort zone. And maybe that's why a lot of people push competitive shooting, because it is a way to see where you stack up against people. But if you're not willing to put the work in outside of a match, well, I don't think you're really going to get that much better just by going to shoot matches. Mm-hmm. And just like, hey, if I went to the gym today to join some type of class, if I don't continue to go back to do it, or, I don't stay consistent with it, I'm not going to really get anything out of it. Right. It's not to say like the class was bad or whatever. I'm not putting in the work to do it. Right. So, I look from, again, like, how I look at things from a firearm standpoint is very similar to what people think of dry fire, or I guess movement standpoint. Dry fire, you don't need any ammo to do it. You can do it off the range. You can do it on the range. Movement, the vision, a lot of the work can be done off the range without the gun to improve that quality and characteristic when you put the gun back in your hand and you get back on the range, or you put it in a holster and put it on your belt and go about your day. First and foremost, I think strength is the foundation of everything we do in life. Movement is essential in life. Without those two things, life doesn't happen. Yeah. So for me, that's very important. And it's my priority. And people might think that's backwards, but without those two things, like, you wouldn't be able to get out of bed.
You ain't shooting nothing without it.
Yeah. You're not going to be able to walk down the stairs, go do anything without those things. And ultimately, I think those things will benefit you far more throughout life than how well you can shoot. I heard, I think it was, I don't know, listen to Steve Fisher on one of his lives that he's been doing. Mm-hmm. It's like, grandma shot somebody and breaking into their house, or, so-and-so shot somebody. Like, these people have little to no training involved. They just are in the right spot at the right time. They have a position of advantage. Maybe they are in a situation to where, yes, a firearm benefited them, but, do we all need to be world champions in shooting? No. To be proficient? Absolutely not. But I think there's nothing wrong with becoming better at shooting. But you guys might see it in your career field. I've certainly seen it working with a lot of people in a lot of different career fields and ways of life, is that fitness is important, and being physically fit, your outcomes of survivability increase drastically because health-related diseases are the number one cause of death that we face. Yeah. So taking care of your mind, taking care of your body is super important. And that's I think it's a hard pill for people to swallow. And maybe people like, you're seriously talking about that? You're trying to get people to become better at shooting guns, and you're telling them not to do that? I'm like, no, I ain't saying don't do it. Yeah. I'm saying, what are the priorities that we need to look at? And I think physical fitness is a very big priority.
You want people to be able to make it to the range before they worry about whether they can shoot their gun or not.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I think
a simple way to put it.
Yeah. I think if you are into guns and into shooting, like, you should be going to the range. You should be being proficient with it, because you are wielding a very powerful tool. And you should be very good at it, doing that, or at least to a certain level that it is going to provide a benefit to you in the end, and not cause you or cause somebody else pain because of your poor decisions or your poor skills and abilities.
Yeah. I think some people treat it like a video game and they think they're better by how many rounds they've shot that year when they've sat on a line and just shot.
Yeah. You always see the round counts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It depends who it is.
Like, I will say, like, if you want to get better at a sport, the way to get better at it is to continue to go and do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly a very true. Like, if I wanted to be better at playing football, I need to be going to play football. If I want to be better at hockey, better be skating a lot and working on that. But again, there's another segment to this that, being in better shape, being more physically trained has its benefits. It's important to do. So, if you want to get better at shooting, you need to get on the range, you need to be doing dry fire. You need to be putting rounds down range. Now, the thing with that is you need to be objective in your training, because just squirting bullets out of the gun isn't going to make you better.
Dumping into trash.
And including in your dry fire. I know you're a big proponent on that. Everything you do, you stay engaged and it's like meaningful. If you're going to be dry firing your gun and not spending time with your family, you're going to do it for a reason, not just sitting there pointing out the wall, squeezing the trigger.
Absolutely. Like, you need to be in dry fire, obviously very honest, because you don't have holes in the target to tell you like whether it's good or not. So you need to have a certain level of understanding of
hopefully you don't.
Bad. Yeah, hopefully you don't. But like, just from shooting, you guys have seen it, and I'm sure a lot of us have seen it, is, we see people like, I went to the range today, and their targets don't necessarily get any better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, are what we doing, is it being useful?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we just, enjoying the moment? And that's a big comparison I make with individuals talking about in shoot camp, is like, we have shooting and training in our name. There's a difference.
Yeah.
Shooting is going to have fun. It's enjoying the sport. But training is very, very detailed, and it needs to have reflection. It needs to have a purpose. And I look at it and I relate it back to working out and training. They are very different. Working out is like, man, like, yep, I want to go get a workout in today. Maybe I want to go, I just want to go get smoked, like get a sweat on, get a pump on, go do something, and go through the motions, versus training is very methodical. It's very detail oriented. There's objectives to it, and there's a whole other system to that. So, what I do down here when I lift, like, we're training for a reason. And there's some days where, like, hey, I'm going to go work out and I'm just going to
move some weight around
together. Yeah. Just do a bunch of stuff to kind of hopefully make myself feel a little better, get a sweat on, do some things. But, is there some long end goal to it? Maybe, maybe not. That's what I kind of look at shooting and training. There's a difference. There's a difference between working out and training. So, when you go and do those things, it has to be very, very detail oriented. People talk about purposeful training, or what's another, deliberate training.
Yeah, I've seen all three of them.
But training is training. Like, it's deliberate, it's purposeful. There's like no deliberate training. There's no purposeful training, because if you're not doing that, you're just shooting,
not training to begin with,
or you're just working out. Exactly, it's not training to begin with.
Yeah,
training is very deliberate, it's very purposeful, because it's mapped out, it's organized. You've got plans and sets and reps and rep counts and whatever to be done.
Yeah.
So there's a huge difference already. So I was like, hey, you're gonna go train, because training is purposeful. It is deliberate, because if you're just spinning your wheels, you're not doing that.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you if you had any weird, like, FUD lore you wanted to dispel before we hopped off here, or myths or industry scars, as they call it, or just silly things. We've talked about a lot of them, but
yeah, I think the big things is the shooting community needs to continue to look outside of its small group on what performance training is. There's, I think, the big push in shooting is, to always get faster and always get more accurate. And there's a ton of room and growth there for a lot of people. But I think comes a point in time where people become proficient enough on speed and accuracy that you may just not know, but you may no longer get that vertical growth in that area.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do we continue to incorporate other concepts to improve performance, to make better performers?
Yeah.
So I look at that as, don't discredit something because you've never done it or it's never been done that way. Because that is a FUD lore thing in every aspect of life or agency, or, how things were done is, well, and I deal with this all the time as a strength coach, dealing with coaches who are coaching teams. They're like, well, we didn't do that, so we're not going to do that. Or I didn't doing it that way, so we're not going to do it. It's like, okay, why? Well, just because. So, and I've dealt with that in the shooting community a lot too. Mm-hmm. But I constantly see now all these ideas that we've been talking about for years becoming to the surface more, and now being more accepted, and just like, I don't know. Like, I've told people, like, no, I don't have an extensive law enforcement background. I wasn't a cool military operator dude. So who am I to say like how this stuff works? But the people that do it, and are doing it, will be like, yeah, stuff works. Like it's applicable. And now it's being, again, more and more kind of related into the world. And that's my big thing, is trying to find ways to continue to incorporate these ideas, to make them more applicable and more accessible.
Yeah.
The idea of utilizing performance coaches outside of shooting, I think from a physical standpoint, I would like to see be more accepted, but also more mainstream, but still like removing the tools from those things, because we see it all the time, like mental management. Like, sports psychology has been around for a long time. I shared some things a few weeks ago, and somebody messaged me about it, and they're like, oh, that's very like Lanny Basham, type of stuff. And I was like, yeah, but Lanny Basham didn't come up with sports psychology. Like, he was just a successful shooter who utilized the concepts into his own game. And they're like, well, yeah, but he's the one who kind of like popularized it. I'm like, yeah, he like brought it in, but like, he is not the guy.
Yeah.
Like,
he read some books.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, so, I mean, that's the thing. Like, but when we do mental management or sports performance from that standpoint, like, there's no gun in the hand. Like,
right.
It's all things up here. So, like, working on movement, and here's kind of a thing. Like, we see it on the internet, is we see everyone bash the idea about, and I have no dog in this fight, but see everyone bash the idea of footwork and CQB. But yet we see people wanting to learn footwork on a closed flat square range for competitive shooting. I'm like, so this is my big thing when it comes to movement. There's some techniques that I will talk about, obviously, when it comes to movement and how to do things. But ultimately, what we want individuals to do is to build this large drop down menu. So when they find themselves in a situation, they can pull from the drop down menu to choose the most efficient and effective way to move. And the body's going to do that regardless.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to coach things out of people or coach certain techniques into people, it's allowing them to explore these inconsistencies or variabilities into movement and harness them and coach certain movements up, so that they execute them properly, and that they are moving in the most efficient and effective manner, and that they are expressing and absorbing force properly in how their body is being utilized in the concept, the situation, or the task that they're doing. Yeah. That's, I think, the big thing that is really missing out of the whole movement side, is everyone wants to teach a certain technique on how to do things and coach certain things out of people, versus coaching things up and making people perform better and execute those techniques better. One thing, like people say, the whole drop step thing, by moving your foot, 6 inches one way, the opposite way you're going, you're wasting time. Like, you've tested it on a timer, and a shot timer is recording shot times. And there's a ton of other variabilities in doing a course of fire than just the movement pattern from one point to the other. Mm-hmm. So until you take the shooting aspect out of it and you put it into a timing gate just to look at the movement time from position to position, people who say you waste time taking a step, I don't truly believe and understand what's really happening, because what I see is poor execution in the technique versus proper execution in the technique.
Yeah.
So or the technique is so overly exaggerated poorly because we're trying to get people to buy into the solution you've created,
and they just mimic it and they have no idea what they're actually doing.
Yeah. So
fudging the numbers.
And that's like that's a lot of the things that, I talk about, that I've been talking about lately in the past couple of weeks, is like how we express force matters, like how I put my foot in the ground and how I do things is going to matter, and it's going to make a difference. If I do things poorly there, well, sure, I'm going to waste time, because I'm wasting time because I've executed the movement pattern poorly. So I've got some more stuff going to come up with that in a couple of weeks to kind of show some more things. But I think that's one thing is looking more outside the circle when we want to talk about performance and other aspects of shooting, versus constantly listening to the regurgitated dogma that is being sold from shooters over the years, who again may not fully understand what is actually being done, because all they've heard it from is somebody who's come before them who may be a better shooter, but they themselves may not be well experienced or educated into what they are actually talking about.
Right.
It's just,
they might just be naturally good at shooting, which happens.
Right. And I think that's the biggest thing. I guess the biggest bud lore thing from movement standpoint is, don't do this because this is better.
Right.
It needs to be like, let's coach things up to make that better.
Yeah.
Versus trying to coach it out of people, because we all move differently. And I think that's another thing that I've taken from Rob Gray and reading and listening to him in his work is everybody's got their own little quirks. Everyone's going to move a little differently. So stop trying to get everybody to do how you exactly do things, and let them self-explore, let them self-discover how to become effective and efficient with the concepts that you are applying into training.
Preach it, brother.
So, I mean, if I got in the weight room and basically told everybody to squat how I squat, or if I got out in the grass and told everybody how to sprint exactly how I sprint, we're not going to get anywhere.
Right.
Or how I do a power clean or a snatch, or how I do things. Like, here are the fundamental concepts of how this stuff works, and this is how we want to be doing it, essentially. But we need to get this from here to here, or we need to make you be able to put rounds on target accurately. And this is essentially what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
How you do that, where you put pressure on the gun, will some may be better than others, possibly, but I don't think there's an absolute answer for everybody. So when it comes to movement and it comes to how things are executed, it's how can somebody accomplish the task in their most effective and efficient way to get the job done. And that's what's going to really matter, because ultimately, even if we're in a closed environment, things always don't go how they're supposed to go.
Right.
And we have to self-organize. We have to be adaptive and problem solving and make those creative decisions in order to execute the task efficiently and effectively and have that positive outcome. So
it sounds like you want people to be accountable for themselves instead of, my instructor never showed me that, so I don't know.
Right. I mean, and I think that's kind of the thing where going back into where I want to kind of bring things into training is create, more of game-like a style of training.
Yeah.
Is, hey, if we're going to start kneeling and I want you to stand and I want you to draw, or we're going to start standing and I want you to kneel and draw, or, different start positions, instead of always squared, hands prepped at the target, or, or just like those unconventional hand positions, but you're still in a static position. Like those are still
you're squared off. Yeah.
You're still very gameable, or turns and draws or whatever. Like the ideas are very similar, but how I am working to apply those concepts are very different because now we're incorporating more movement to it. So there is a point in time that the true technical fundamentals should be isolated, but there comes a point in time in everyone's training journey where we have to start implementing this drill-like situation or strategy to make it more real. Yeah. And honestly, like training gunfights is something that is very difficult to do because nobody wants to get shot, right? Obviously. And it was very bad if you're an instructor, but doing force on force is not always a possibility for individuals. And it's also very difficult to do and to manage.
Yeah. Cool. All right, man. Well, we're not going to take up too much more of your time. Is there anything you want to shout out before we head out?
Run LTT.
Hell yeah. I was hoping you were going to say that.
No, I mean, the thing is there was another mentor of mine in college. He's a wrestling coach, Coach Malachek. And he always preached to the team, his kids. And what we're working with them was, invest time in yourself. Don't spend time. Yeah. And to me, that's a big difference. Like investing time in yourself, you care about what you're doing versus spending time is just going through the motions. Yeah. And that investment is putting money in the bank. So when the time comes, you have the opportunity to make a sizable withdrawal to have a positive outcome in what you need to do. Yeah. So I say, take care of your body. And by doing that, and improve your mental health. And if you want to get better at shooting, well, you need to get on the range, you need to do some training, dry fire, be accountable in what you're doing. But ultimately, my big thing is be your best, be elite, and every day continue to improve, become a better version of yourself, no matter what that is.
Amen to that.
Very well said.
I'm going to put some links down for your IG and the website and everything, because if people want to look into this, you have so much stuff on Instagram where you could just start implementing this stuff, today,
Yeah.
So,
a lot of good info, a lot of free stuff. And if people are interested, they can always reach to me there.
Yep. I will put a link down below. If you don't feel like clicking the link, it's the Brandon Powers on Instagram. So,
simple.
You got anything, Timmy?
Nope.
All right, man. Thanks again for talking to us. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good day, guys.
You too, man. Take it easy.